Hello, my name is Kendrea, and today I want to talk to you guys about the communication styles and nonverbal communications within the South Korean culture. Now, I want you guys to think of the most offensive hand gesture to you or to your culture. If a stranger came to you and displayed that gesture, how would you react? Now, initially, I know I might react in a negative way, but then I have to ask myself to consider their intentions. Maybe in their culture, that gesture is a term of endearment, whereas it is as offensive to me. But we cannot bank on that when we go travel different cultures, especially if we're going into someone else's country. We have to do our part by educating ourselves on different communication forms in different cultures. Today, I hope that this video allows you to learn a little more about South Korean communication and further your development in intercultural communication. So, South Korea is the southern half of the Korean peninsula. It's surrounded by the Yellow Sea and the Sea of Japan. It is it's described as a very beautiful place with beautiful beaches and natural scenery. I believe 70% of the landscapes in South Korea are hills and mountains. The top two religions of South Korea is Christianity and Buddhism, and the capital of Korea is Seoul. Their government is a centralized democratic republic, um, and it kind of takes after a little bit of the United States. But the thing that you guys probably most associate with South Korea is K-pop or K-dramas or their fashion industry. South Korea is actually described as one of the major exports of popular culture. It's becoming more and more diverse because of the way people are coming to stay and get jobs in South Korea because of these different fields. It's South Korea is also described as a collectivist culture by the International Journal of Internet Marketing and Advertisement. This journal I read discussed how South Koreans' cultures emphasize on interdependence. They value harmony and family security and group well-being, which also goes in to say that South Korea is a feminine culture. And you may see these aspects of what they value through the way that they follow an ethical code of conduct in social life and respecting their elders. So let's first start by looking at communication styles. The Culture Atlas describes South Koreans' communication as indirect, and the IOR Global Services Journal also defines their style as high context. Their communication is implicit and relies heavily on context, which is what high context means. You may have to imply or suggest what is meant because in Korean culture they rely less on words and more observant on the speaker's posture or their expression and tone. Secondly, their communication style is formal, so they are very, very big on face saving, the term face saving. In certain situations, like getting bad news or being embarrassed, displaying these facial expressions or these are not appropriate in public. So this reminds me of a video that I had to watch for a class about Japanese baseball. The little girl was really sad when her team lost, and she was crying out in public, but her mom told her to stop crying and that she could cry later. I know this is a different culture, but this video helped me put in perspective of how important saving face is within the Korean culture. While studying this topic, I watched a few videos of a Korean woman who was showing the correct way to do some important hand gestures. Her emotions and her facial expressions were so conversational. Within South Korean culture, it is okay to openly show emotions when it is appropriate. So maybe most likely within a group or among your peers. Um, you can, like when you're having a conversation, be very expressive, and show those kind of emotions. And I will talk about the money gesture later on in the video. That is a great example of how to express some kind of emotion without being inappropriate. Now to nonverbal communication. Now, nonverbal communication can involve pointing, smiling gestures, and signals, etc. I'm not going to touch on all the ways of nonverbal communications, but instead I'm going to just discuss how South Koreans feel about space and touching, and I will also show you some important and interesting gestures and describe their meanings. So, one, space and touching. Please, like, they do not like physical touch from strangers. Please minimize physical contact unless in public spaces. They are very understanding about when you're walking on the street and you might hit them with their elbow or anything like that because the streets are very busy. But in person or not in public, Koreans do not like to be touched by strangers. They especially don't like to be touched on the head. So for some reason you wanted to touch someone's head, please do not do that. Or touch their hair, do not do that. They prefer no PDA. So if you're going to South Korea with your hubby, do not display kissing or physical affection. It is okay with genders or close friendships to have touching, though. Gestures and body language. This is my favorite part that I studied about Korean communication cultures because I'm a very expressive communicator and my love language is touch. So I plan on living in South Korea in a couple years, so I found it very important for me to increase my communication competence. This gesture, do this, do not do this, do not do this. This means to them, like, do you want to fight? Like, do you want to fight? So if you want to tell someone to come here, you should put your palm down like this. And if you want to say, come here informally, you do like this. But if you want to say, come here formally, you just do this. So informal, informal. Yeah, so please do not do this because that is very offensive to in Korean culture. Now, people get this confused because this means okay, which is a gesture that Korean culture uses as well, but this means money. So, if you're in a position where you're talking about something that may lead to you speaking about money, um, but it's not appropriate to actually talk about money out loud, then you would do this. So if you're like saying, I love my job, but that's saying like you love your job, but the money is not that good. Or if you're saying like, I have no money, you can do no money. Yeah. So that's the distinguishing between money and okay. This symbol is one of the most common symbols used to let people know that you want to go out for drinks. You do this, or you can act like you're holding a shot glass and pour it back. Yeah. And my favorite one of all is love. This is the Korean heart. You can do this to display a heart, or you can do this to say, I like you or I love you. Today, I discussed how South Koreans' collectivism and feminine culture is a reflection of their morals and views. I also discussed the style that South Koreans communicate with. Lastly, we looked at some gestures and their meanings, and I have learned so much by studying this. So I hope that you guys learned a lot and I gave you some helpful information to take along with you. Maybe I inspired you to do some research concerning communication styles and nonverbal communication within South Korean culture. So I just want to say thank you and have a good day.